Okay. Okay. Continue our lesson today is distinction between quantitative and qualitative. Okay. So the first one is quantitative. Okay. This type of research involves an inquiry into identify based on testing a theory which is already been developed and adapted by various studies. Okay. And it has been proven to be useful in the theory has been known to be replicable in various settings. Okay, right. It's measured with numbers and analyzed using statistical techniques, whether you use SAS, SASR, or any relevant software. The ultimate goal of quantitative method is to determine whether the predictive generalization of a theory is hold true otherwise. Okay, right. So to sum it all up, will need to have a strong theory as a foundation before you can do a quantitative study, and that theory usually is applicable or replicable and has been widely used by past researchers. Okay, ya kalau social science and behavior, theory of action, theory of acceptance. Teori-teori ini digunakan dalam research kuantitatif, like restoran dan restoran, eating behavior, eating psychology, dan telah terbukti teori-teori yang saya contohnya sebut saya tadi um, memang trial and tested theory and has been widely used throughout different, meaning similar themes of consumer behavior research, only in different contexts. Okay. Meanwhile, qualitative study is basically a study to inquire and understanding a social or human problem from what is conducted in a natural setting and involves the process of building a complex and holistic picture of phenomena. Okay, kita dengan quantitative ini kita nak understand a certain phenomenon, and from that phenomenon kita mungkin propose a new theoretical uh, framework based on what we are studying. Okay, and kalau kita buat mixed mode, macam saya cerita dalam first week lecture, qualitative mungkin kita buat interview to understand what are the factors people consider um, for them to satisfied dining at a restaurant, and what if mistakes happen, how can the restaurant redeem themselves? So at the early stage, the researcher will do maybe a small group interview and asking them what are the strongest attributes of a restaurant do you think is important? The quality is somehow bad. What do you feel can be done by the restaurant to make amends and make the service better? And from there, the researcher can determine a framework, or he or she goes to the second part, which is the quantitative, in which a structured questionnaires can already be formulated based on the findings of the qualitative study earlier on. Okay. Now, mixed mode can also work, in which the objective or the main theme of the study is mostly quantitative, but have a few qualitative questions to get a more expressive answer, But those few four questions are not designed to answer a different objective or a different hypothesis. Those four uh, additional qualitative questions are mainly asked support or strengthen the findings relating to the quantitative element. Okay. Okay. Example I can give you. Four attributes have been identified um, as the core component of a restaurant. It's food quality, service element, staff competency, and certification. So when you do your structured questionnaires, you may have a respective section for all four. But when you reach your wish to include a subjective question, which is qualitative in nature, may want to ask uh, your respondents to answer between food, between service, between competency, between certification. Which attributes do you think that that is most influential um, in in determining your satisfaction of dining here? So I will give different sorts of answer. Respondent A may say, I think the quality is the most important. Um, I want to come here. I want my food to be top notch. Uh, when I come to the restaurant, the first thing that comes to mind is actually food. Concern B may think that service is important because I'm paying a lot of money. I expect the service there to be professionally done and my food arrives within the stipulated time that I expect. Yes, C may respond by saying, oh, I think staff competency is important because I don't want if I ordered steak, I want the steak to arrive medium well. And if I want to drink wine, waiter must be knowledgeable in recommending which types of wine goes with my meal. Respondent D might say, I think it's the certification because when I see the the Michelin certification in front of the restaurant, it automatically an indication that the food there, the service there, and the competency of the staff is assured to be top-notch because there is certification. Okay, so that is just one example in which in a mixed mode in which a qualitative section of your questionnaire is actually used to support your uh, quantitative findings. Yeah. So you might ask, qualitative, quantitative, or mixed mode, which one suits you? It should be based on what are the problems of your interests, resource available to you, skill and training of the researcher, whether it's in terms of developing a new questionnaire and validating them, or maybe um, your ability to conduct interview, record notes, and interpret the transcript. These are the skills needed when you do surveys as well. So okay. And the fourth is, of course, the audience of your research, depending on where you wish to publish your findings. Maybe Journal A on food service is more qualitative, but Journal B might be more focused on quantitative. So you need ask yourself where do you wish to publish or your study would benefit people in what context, qualitative, quantitative. Okay? And although some research may incorporate both qualitative and mixed both, whether it's uh, qualitative being done first to build the foundation for the quantitative, or you make research mostly quantitative and have small element of qualitative items to support. Regardless whether which approach you take, must have the assumption underlying this approach and data collection and analysis will differ. Okay. Okay. So why is the distinction between quantitative research that important? Because we need to identify and understand the research approach underlying any given study because the selection of research approach will influence the following. Just number one, questions that we need to ask. Number two, methods that you are using. Whether number three, what type of statistical analysis that you need to do. Four, are the inference made? And number five, the ultimate goal of the research. And when you're critically reviewing scientific research, question asked and the answer given, it will depend greatly upon whether the research is either qualitative or quantitative. So let's say you want to do quantitative. What are assumptions, underlying assumptions that is needed? Number one, your reality is objective. Okay, and the independence of decision, therefore, reality is something that can research should remain distant and dependent of what it is research and the value of the researcher do not interfere with research. Research is based primarily on deductive form of logic and theories and hypotheses are tested in a cause-effect order and the goal is to develop a generalization that contributes to theory and enable the researcher to predict, explain, and understand the phenomenon. Okay, in other words, when you want to do quantitative, general theme is you must produce facts and figures. Okay, whether it's frequency, whether it's mean score, standard deviation, p-value, square value. Okay, because we need the those numbers to a deductive form of logic and kita tengok kat sini because we want those numbers to form a logic so that your data can be generalizable to, if not the whole population, maybe a specific population, thus contributing to the theory that you have built upon your study, okay? And to better appreciate and understand the form phenomenon. Let's say you use theory of plan behavior because this is the most widely used theory when it comes to consumer behavior. Maybe you are doing a study relating to customers' repurchase intention when eating out at healthy theme restaurants. Before you did the research, there is lack of literature relating to consumers' eating intention at healthy restaurants. But there are lots of literatures relating to eating out at normal restaurant, theme restaurant, fine dining restaurants, and ethnic restaurants. So, and most of this research use the theory of planned behavior. So, we are reading to that theory of planned behavior has not yet been used in the context of healthy restaurant or healthy cafeteria. But looking at the theory of planned behavior, which has been used widely in other types of restaurant, therefore, by using it to guide my study, which is in the context of healthy restaurant or healthy cafeteria, I will produce XYZ certain pattern of findings, and XYZ pattern findings may show same patterns with the findings that have been done in a normal restaurant at the restaurant, or there might be slight differences. Okay, but if there's similarity or slight difference, it generally contributes to the generalization and contribution to the expansion of the theory or the adaptability of the certain theory that you've used. Okay, and types of quantitative study should be familiar. Either you want to do experiment, uh, in this case, product development, or you want to collect certain number of um, street foods and do microbiological analysis and to see whether which food has the highest number of E. coli staphylococcus, which food is less contaminated with bacteria. So, and of course, you want to do new product development of, let's say, a new fish cake that is maybe that is, I don't know, maybe transparent in color, but the taste is just as good as a normal fish cake, which is brown in color. Okay, and it's another most common approach is of course surveys, which can be done cross-sectional, once buat study saja, or longitudinal, in which you within a number of samples, say 100 people, but they have to do answer your survey, or you take measurements from them, let's say their height, their weight, um, in throughout the duration of 6 months, because you want to see whether um, continuously eating vegetables throughout 6 months can improve body weight. Okay, cross-sectional. If you do it once, maybe you want to measure. Okay, I want to understand your eating patterns of fast food. So please take this questionnaire and take how many times do you eat fast food within a week. So your respondents will roughly answer, let's say, oh, I prefer to eat at McDonald's. I prefer to eat pizza, and I visit this food establishment twice a week, 3 times a week, or some might say I eat fast food all the time. But the nature of cross-sectional survey or the information gathering is only done once. Others will not need to come another day and respond to another set of questions. Okay? Okay. Now, as for qualitative studies or methods, okay, it reflects on multiple realities that exist in any given situation, in which such as those who are individuals have been investigated and the reader or audience interpreting the results, i.e., to multiple perspectives, voices, or informants. Okay, people might have a different perspective on what they perceive um, be the most important factors when you come to a restaurant. There may be four, like you said before: food quality, service quality, certification, um, certification or staff competency. When you do a qualitative study, sometimes your respondent might give a uh, broader response beyond the four attributes that you may have identified earlier on. Some might give or express their views on how pricing influence your decision, their decision to eat. Some might talk about ambience. Some might talk about lighting, location, and so on. Okay, so multiple perspective can be involved when the respondents voice out their views on a certain topic they are asked or provoked about. Okay, the researcher interacts with those he studied and actively work to minimize the distance between the researcher and those being researched. Qualitative is also contextual bound, and the research is based on inducing a form of logic. berbeza dengan quantitative. It is done based on an already established logic or established theory. In qualitative, you are inducing form of logic, meaning you want to build upon a new theory. Okay. So consider categories of interest emerge from your informant rather than being identified prior by the research. Okay, you want to build something different what has already been established. And the goal is to uncover and discover patterns of theories that may help explain a phenomenon of this. The determination of accuracy involves verifying the information or with informants, triangulating among different sources of information. Generally, there are many types, but the most common three types quantitative qualitative studies are number one is the case study. Okay, it's basically explores a single entity or phenomenon bounded by time and activity. It collects detailed performance through a variety of data collection persists over a sustained period of time, and the descriptive records of individual experience or behavior are kept outside by the observer. Okay, since dikatakan ni, case study ialah satu phenomenon bounded by time and the activity. Contohnya 2014 banjir besar di Kelantan dan Terengganu. Mungkin you as a researcher, you nak buat bagaimana penjual makanan pada masa tu berhadapan dengan masalah ni sebabkan garai mereka hanyut oleh air banjir. Bagaimana diorang bangun balik? Adakah macam mana diorang deal dengan jabatan kebajikan yang beras ataupun pihak bank ataupun persatuan peniaga menghulurkan dana khas untuk diorang bangunkan semula bisnes. Okay, dan pas banjir tu pulih, bagaimana mungkin you nak tahu bagaimana cara mereka untuk mendapatkan supply makanan untuk mula balik perniagaan mereka. Adakah menu yang sedia ada terpaksa berubah atau bernaik harga. Okay. So, imagine words case study, fenomena yang dikaji berlaku pada ketika itu saja. Kalau 2014, Kelantan dan Terengganu, you kena kaji responden yang telah mengalami peristiwa itu dan berada di lokasi tersebut. You tak boleh misalnya you nak buat pasal banjir 2014, tapi you ambil responden daripada mangsa banjir di Selangor misalnya contoh, ataupun mangsa tsunami 2004 di Kedah for your so-called case study yang melibatkan banjir yang melibatkan mangsa banjir 2014 yang asalnya peniaga makanan, tetapi setelah musibah tu berlaku, diorang punya cara untuk bangun balik tu agak mencabar. Okay. Keywords here is bound by time and activity. Whether it's a program, event, institution, or within what's the social groups or where the social groups are related. Okay. Now the second type of commonly used qualitative research is the ethnographic. Okay. It's on the slide. It is involves studies on how a cultural group or subcultural group in the natural settings over a specific period of time. A cultural group can be identified of individuals who share a common social experience, locations, or other social topics of interest. Okay, sempat dikatakan ethnographic. Ethno kalau ikutkan by definition menunjukkan pada ethnicity or subgroups or subtribes of certain people. Kalau yang contoh paling dekat, maybe you terbayang orang asli lah. So, kalau you nak buat qualitative research orang asli, you nak tengok macam mana gaya pemakanan dia, gaya kehidupan dia, gaya dia um, bangunkan dia punya agriculture tu, bagaimana you tanya dia bagaimana dia guna baja asli compared to baja organik, adakah dia rasa faedah ni lebih mesra alam, dan dari segi tabiat pemakanan berbanding dengan orang yang uh, gali bandar, portion nasinya banyak mana, um, lauk ayam tu dipanggang mungkin digoreng cara lain. Okay, so that's one example of study yang menjaga ethnographic. Satu lagi contoh ethnographic studies mungkin, okay, katakan you berada di Jepun dan you nak buat kajian tentang subgroup imigran Malaysia yang telah berhijrah ke Jepun untuk settle down di Jepun dan kerja di Jepun. Mungkin you nak tengok um, okay, first of all, setelah you identify this community, katakan di Osaka telah tinggal 30 tahun, mungkin 3 generasi. So mungkin you nak tengok bagaimana tabiat perubahan mereka dalam tabiat pemakanan mereka. Adakah daripada 3 generasi masih lagi makan nasi dan sambal belacan dan sayur, ataupun diorang dah ubah makan contohnya sushi dan sambal belacan. Mungkin dia suka sambal belacan dengan sushi tu sebab dia tak suka wasabi tu tak cukup kuat. Manalah tahu kan. Okay. Another aspect mungkin you tengok apa perubahan yang dia lalui. Ada misalnya di kampung dia dulu sebelum dia berhijrah ke Jepun, dia makan ikan bilis yang kecil-kecil dalam masin. Tetapi apabila dia berhijrah ke Jepun, ikan bilisnya besar-besar belaka. So, sambal ikan bilis warga Malaysia yang telah berhijrah tinggal 30 tahun, so dia wow, mungkin sambal ikan bilis tu mirip ikan sardin punya saiz. Walau-walau, but that is one example people could do and could secara ni secara olok-olok saja may find when you do an ethnographic study involving people who have migrated to another country and how the lifestyle in terms of food consumption, food purchase patterns and ingredients modification when they want to cook dalam contoh tadi sambal ikan bilis di Jepun tu. Okay. Alright. And the third qualitative study will be the phenomenological studies. Okay, it is a human experience examined through the detailed description of people studied. The goal is to understand the lived experience of individuals being studied, and this approach involves researching a small group of people extensively over long periods of time. Okay, kalau you nak compare this dengan case study you buat your target group of people ni mengalami satu fenomena ni pada waktu yang telah berlalu. Okay, dan perkara yang fenomena yang dia lalui itu mungkin tak akan berulang lagi pada dia ataupun akan berulang lagi jauh 50 tahun, 100 tahun daripada apa yang dia alami. Okay, because it is time bound. But phenomenological study is the phenomenon that is ongoing. Okay, so satu fenomena yang ongoing right now is, okay lah, paling obviously is the COVID-19 pandemic period. So katakan you nak buat kajian cabaran peniaga kecil-kecilan ni dalam sustaining their business throughout COVID-19 ni. So you pilihlah misalnya penjual keropok lekor di di Batu Rakit. Okay, so you buatlah kajian and tanya dia punya pendapat dan pengalaman dia lalui pada fasa-fasa awal COVID-19. Bila misalnya contoh 4 bulan pertama lockdown tak boleh nak berniaga, masa cari source of income lain. Apabila dibenarkan berniaga, bagaimana diorang bangun dan balik, adakah diorang patut hadkan pengeluaran lekor diorang. Okay. Dan di hujung 2020 kena lockdown lagi, bagaimana diorang cope, adakah diorang berjaya mengeluarkan KWSP ataupun mendapat dana bantuan khas daripada Satuan Usahawan Keropok Lekor, sebagainya. Adakah bagaimana cabaran diorang lalui untuk dapatkan vaksin so that diorang boleh dibenarkan berniaga semula. Dan apabila dibenarkan berniaga semula 2021, bagaimana sambutan pelanggan-pelanggan mereka terhadap keropok lekor yang dijual. Okay. And the list goes on as the pandemic goes by. But to show, phenomenological studies ialah fenomena yang tengah berlaku berterusan. Okay? Dia bukan macam case study, you buat kajian tentang peristiwa ataupun grup yang telah berlalu dan dengan orang yang melalui fenomena itu. Okay? Dah berakhir di situ. Phenomenological, ongoing. Case study, the phenomenon has passed several months, several years ago. Okay. All right. To get a better understanding of how qualitative and quantitative works, I've also provided for you 2 links for you to watch together. These additional videos that provided in the slide will give you maybe a much easier explanation of how qualitative works and how qualitative and what qualitative study is all about. So let's watch them.
Use each. To begin, let's take a look at qualitative research. So, qualitative research consists of collecting data through open questions, so that we get an understanding of different people's point of view. And, most importantly, we do not intend to do calculations based on the answers we get. Or we might do some, but we know that the numbers aren't really representative of our target population. They're not solid enough to draw conclusions to optimize anything based on them. The point is to gather broad knowledge. Typically, qualitative research is done using questionnaires with open questions.
Dia kata, selain pada verbal interviews, you can also give out surveys, but your surveys should be open-ended as compared to a quantitative study in which your survey question, you have already framed or set the parameters of what the respondents can answer. Maybe you set a scale between 1 to 5. 1 stands for I think this product is very poor. While 5 may present, oh, I love this product. This product is excellent. Okay. And when examples of open air, maybe you can ask, okay, comparing food quality to service quality, which one do you think is more important? Okay, you will get wide variety of answers and justification on why A might say food is important, B saying service is important. Okay?
And we allow respondents to answer whatever they like. For example, a typical question in a qualitative market research study for a new product might be, what do you consider to be this product's main positive aspects? We use these questions because at an early stage of research, we may not yet have a good knowledge about the market and we have no idea of what people may answer. Or we think that we have an idea, but we want to make sure, because if we're used to doing market research, we know that there will be surprises and we don't want post-launch surprises. In this case, it's a good idea to have a broad conversation with a handful of people to get a general idea of what people like, so that we can generate some hypotheses regarding the product's main selling points. But a key thing to have in mind here is that our goal with this question would be just to get an idea of what people like. We're not trying to understand what percentage of our market likes which features best. So, with qualitative research, the point is to expand on general knowledge. And that's why this type of research is usually conducted through interviews, focus groups, advisory boards, mock negotiations, or any other sorts of means that allows us to have open interactions with respondents that may even sometimes be tailored as the conversation moves along. Unfortunately, having these types of broad discussions is very time-consuming. You need to spend time conducting the interviews or preparing and moderating the group discussions, and the data obtained can be all over the place, even if you have a pre-designed discussion guide.
Dia bersifat open end, walaupun mungkin saya perlu interview 10 orang je, but the interview process tu is not as straightforward or easy as it sounds. Because you kena bukan saja buka mata, you kena buka telinga and carefully interpret your transcript yang you dah dapat tu, so that you can accurately grasp the idea of what your respondent is talking about. Okay.
That makes analyzing these results very time-consuming.
It's very time-consuming because open-end question will lead to many unstructured answers that needs to be restructured, restructured, and the restructuring of unstructured answers will consume a lot of your time.
On top of that, the interviewer must have enough depth of knowledge on the topic to be able to steer the discussion to obtain the most relevant information possible from each respondent.
The researcher or the interviewer must have the knowledge in terms of interviewing skills dan juga knowledge about the phenomenon. Ini kalau dia nak cakap pasal important attributes for in a restaurant, and if something goes wrong, how can they recover? Bolehnya kena stick to the topic. The interviewer kena sedaya upaya elakkan daripada orang cerita pasal apa. Misalnya, anak saya sakit, sakit gigi, tak boleh makan, ataupun handphone Samsung ni barulah, saya sukalah, saya nak guna ni untuk order makanan dah hantar ke rumah saya. Itulah antara cabaran-cabaran yang perlu dielakkan lah in a qualitative interview.
The interviewer must make sure that the results obtained make sense and can be acted upon, or the research will be pointless. If the outcome of our research is that people want flying cars, well, your interviewer didn't do a great job. What are you supposed to do with that? Anyway, due to all of this, qualitative interviews or other qualitative research methods can't be used in large numbers. While they allow
sebab tu dia tak boleh buat dalam large numbers, tak sesuai you nak buat interview 300-3,000 orang.
To collect very granular data, and they allow for an expansion of gathered information outside your initial scope of knowledge, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until an interviewee brings it up. The format of research does not allow to scale the number of answers. It would be too time-consuming and expensive. So this type of research does not allow us to talk about averages, means, percentages, and all the numbers that we typically like to use when describing a market for a product. And that's where quantitative research comes in. In quantitative research, you get information from a large number of participants, which allows you to have a respondent sample that is large enough to be representative of your target market. That is, whatever is going on in this sample is likely to be going on in your market as a whole. Anyway, just as in the case of qualitative research, quantitative research can come in several different formats. But for market research purposes, we're generally talking about surveys or behavior observation. I'll assume we're talking about surveys here. In this case, since we need data from a large amount of participants and surveys are boring to fill in, the research materials need to be a lot simpler for whoever is taking the survey, not for the researcher, of course. For the researcher, quantities are usually a lot tougher to put together. And that is because while you can keep an interviewee engaged in a discussion for well over an hour, and advisory boards can last an entire day or even several days and still keep people engaged all the way through, if you send people a survey that takes 1 hour to complete, the data after a certain point may not be the best quality because people are completely fed up. And I'd assume that people who answer are all being paid to do so. Also, people taking surveys should be able to understand everything that's presented to them and answer the questions by themselves, although there are exceptions. So simplicity is a must.
Simplicity is a must in quantitative. Okay, we are going to cover that in the next topic relating to building up a survey questionnaire.
Anyway, in the case of quantitative market research, not only the questions are predefined, but for ease of analysis, the answers are usually predefined also.
Okay. Apa dia kata tadi? Siapa tu saya sebut? The questions in a quantitative survey and answers are already predefined.
Usually respondents are asked to select among options, rank stuff, score stuff, distribute points, provide a number, etc. That makes it possible to analyze a high volume of data without the need to spend hours and hours reading through answers. So, although the answers to a quantitative study can be qualitative, for ease of analysis, they are usually predetermined so that they can each be represented by a number or a letter. As an example, while for a qualitative study, we might ask, what 3 things do you like the most about this product? And leave it at that. For a quantitative study, we might ask, what 3 things do you like the most about this product? A, ease of use, B, design, C, price-quality relationship, D, whatever makes sense.
It's a simple example of how qualitative questionnaire may look like and how a quantitative questionnaire can look like. Left, it's open-ended. On the right, it's predetermined.
Etc., etc. While you may notice that the several options are qualitative answers, if we analyze the percentage of people selecting options A, B, C, etc., we are doing a quantitative analysis of qualitative data. And this is important to understand. What makes a quantitative research quantitative and a qualitative research qualitative isn't that one has quantitative data and the other one has qualitative data. Quantitative market research studies can have qualitative questions and qualitative ones can have quantitative questions. The difference is that for a quantitative analysis, we need a high volume of data so that we can consider that the data is representative of a target population. And generating that high volume of answers is what leads us to having constraints regarding the way in which we can ask things, since we must be able to analyze a lot of responses, making it impossible to read through text answers in a cost-effective way. This leads us to an added difficulty with quantitative studies, which is that to define upfront what options you will give respondents, you must already have a solid expectation regarding likely answers. Otherwise, you'd have a bunch of other please explain answers if you give respondents that option, and a lot of work to do. Or worse, people just pick whatever so they don't have to type and your data is total garbage. So, at the end of the day, quantitative research is usually best suited to quantify things that you either already know or suspect that are going on. Now, could you add a couple of qualitative open questions to a quantitative research? Of course. However, you would need to code the answers afterward. That is, you would have to categorize the answers into buckets of similar answers if you want to do any sort of quantitative analysis based on them. Like, for example, what percentage of the population gave an answer that falls into a given category. And that's a major headache. You have no idea until you try it. Sounds simple, but coding answers after getting the answers really is just a nightmare. So, to sum up, quantitative research versus qualitative research sometimes isn't a matter of either or, but a matter of where we stand in the process of understanding the market. Qualitative market research is good to gain knowledge, but not suitable to measure and optimize. While quantitative market research is good to measure something that you already know or suspect is there, but you don't know the extent to which is there and you want to measure it. So it is likely that you'll need to do both at some point. When it comes to product development, the one to go for to test your idea would clearly be qualitative market. However, if what you want is to optimize your price, you should bet on a quantity. The key takeaway is that both qualitative and quantitative market research are great tools, but they serve different purposes. So you need to choose the one that suits your particular purpose best.
Yeah.
Tool, the key take market. However, there, but you don't know.
Share. Qualitative is to expand the knowledge. Quantitative is to measure and establish knowledge. Okay. Okay, let's
Of
see
qualitative research and
how
introduce key
qualitative
concepts that will
research
help you
works.
determine if qualitative methods are appropriate for your project study. First, let's review what research, particularly educational research, is designed to do. Research is an organized, systematic, disciplined approach to answering questions about our observations and experiences in the world. It is a structured approach to gathering and interpreting information that allows us to understand, theorize about, or explain experience. What then is distinctive about qualitative research? Qualitative research focuses on generating meaning and understanding through rich description. It can be a particularly useful approach to studying educational problems that requires developing an understanding of complex social environments and the meaning that people. Qualitative research differs from quantitative research in several ways. It typically addresses different problems, arises from a different philosophical view of the world, works to achieve different goals, and uses different methods and design. This table illustrates some of the key differences. Focus. Qualitative research focuses on the quality of experience, trying to describe or understand the essence or nature of human experience. Quantitative research, on the other hand, focuses on more measurable factors, asking questions such as how much, how many, or how frequently. Philosophical roots. Qualitative research integrates more subjective human experience, rather than purely objective external reality. It belongs to the school of constructivism or interpretivism. Quantitative research is based on positivism, that holds that physical and social phenomena are independent of the observer, are fairly stable over time and place, and can be objectively observed and quantified. Goals of investigation. The goals of qualitative research are to understand, describe, discover meaning, or generate hypotheses or theory. Quantitative research aims to predict, control, confirm, and test hypotheses. Design characteristics. The designs used in these two types of research are suited to their goals. Qualitative research design is more flexible, evolving, and emergent, while quantitative research design is structured and predetermined. It should be emphasized that the flexible structure of qualitative research in no way suggests that it is less disciplined or easier to design or implement. Quite the contrary. Well-designed, valid, scholarly qualitative research has flexible structure and is designed and implemented with the same care and attention to detail as any well-designed, valid, and scholarly quantitative study. Data collection. In qualitative research, the researcher is the primary instrument, bringing his or her own perspectives to the selection and meaning of data. Quantitative research depends upon external instruments such as tests, surveys, or other tools used to measure and quantify a particular phenomenon. Now that we have discussed the nature of qualitative research and the kinds and forms of qualitative data, it is easier to understand how qualitative research pursues its research goals. In its very earliest stages, qualitative research aims to explore. The goal is to identify patterns, themes, hunches, and initial models that
Tadi dia kata qualitative main theme there is exploration knowledge.
Provide an initial understanding to accurately convey the experience. Ultimately, qualitative research strives to produce meaningful interpretations of events and phenomena. With interpretation, the goal is to make sense of what goes on, to reach out for understanding or explanation. Case studies explore a program, an event, an activity, over a prolonged period of time. Existing documents. One study may include data from one, several, or all of these sources. For example, a researcher studying a school environment might observe students as they work on daily tasks in the classroom, including students' reactions to the activities, such as body language and facial expressions. A researcher might interview the teacher and students individually, or as part of a small group, about what they were thinking or feeling during the lessons. She may also examine documents such as student work samples and lesson plans to paint a holistic picture of the educational experience. As you plan your research study, you must create a justification for your data collection methods in order to explain why the methods you propose are the most appropriate and most effective way to understand the phenomenon or focus of your study. Before you collect any data for your study, you must receive approval from Walden's Institutional Review Board, or IRB. Visit Walden Notes, organizing field notes from observations, or ensuring all documents to be included in the analysis are present and available. Second, the researcher reduces the data by identifying themes, coding data elements, and creating categories.
This process lah yang time consuming based on the first video. Coding data into specific themes from all your open-ended respondents.
Finally, just as quantitative data must be presented in tables or figures, qualitative data can be presented in narrative form, tables, or visual diagrams. In qualitative research, the data analysis process is flexible and designed to meet each study's needs, but also follows an established protocol and relies on rigorous methodological approaches. The processes of analysis and preparing results are not distinct steps, but are interrelated and often occur simultaneously. In qualitative research, validity is the extent to which the data and the interpretation of the data are credible. Qualitative researchers use different terms to refer to validity. Maxwell uses validity, Lincoln and Guba use trustworthiness, and Creswell uses validation. In addition, these authors use other related subterms. It is important for students to use one recognized author to define all relevant terms for validity. For instance, Lincoln and Guba use 4 additional terms to specify different aspects of trustworthiness: credibility, transferability, dependability, and confirmability. As with any research approach, the researcher must take steps to ensure the validity or accuracy of the research findings. In qualitative research, validity is the extent to which the data and the interpretation of the data are credible. Creswell identifies 8 different strategies used by qualitative researchers to ensure the validity of their findings. Prolonged engagement and persistent data gathering ensure that the researcher does not draw conclusions based upon
validity and reliability to quantitative research. Okay, kalau validity and quantitative adalah analisisnya, which is usually factor analysis or seperti yang Dr. Afifah tunjuk, correlation matrix to make sure that your construct dalam questionnaire itu are valid. Reliability selalunya merujuk pada comeback alpha, but the concept of validity and reliability in qualitative are different. Okay.
an isolated idiosyncratic experience with the phenomenon. Using rich, thick description ensures that a sufficient level of detail about the phenomenon studied is included, so that others might draw the same or similar conclusions. Triangulation refers to using multiple data sources in order to build up a complete picture of a phenomenon. Member checking allows the researcher to present the study's findings or conclusions to the original participants so they can comment on whether they believe their perspectives are accurately portrayed. Presenting negative or discrepant information acknowledges observations or findings that run contrary to the study's key themes. Clarifying one's biases as a researcher similarly acknowledges those preconceptions or biases that will inevitably color the study's conclusions. Peer debriefing enlists the aid of a person other than the researcher to review the findings and ensure that they make sense. Finally, an external auditor is someone not familiar with the researcher or the study who can review the study's overall logic, coherence, and consistency. When considering whether a qualitative approach is right for your study, ask yourself the following questions. First, what kind of phenomenon are you planning to study? Is it related to some aspect of human experience that cannot be counted or expressed in numbers? Does it relate to subjective experience, cultural characteristics, personal perspective, idiosyncratic ideas, or comparisons of intangibles? Second, what do you want to know about the phenomenon? Can you find out what you want to know by immersing yourself in the environment in which you will study the phenomenon, by observing or talking to people within that environment, or by studying the materials they have created? Third, why are you doing the study? Are you interested in interpreting, generating meaning, and gaining a holistic view of a phenomenon, rather than in comparing, measuring, or quantifying a phenomenon? If you answered positively to these questions, qualitative research may be the right choice for your study. Qualitative research is a powerful method of studying the implicit as well as the explicit. It accomplishes this by focusing on personal perceptions of the world and the experiences of people as they construct the reality in which they live. Because of these characteristics, qualitative research can be a powerful tool for social change. As a Walden student, social change is a feature of every student capstone. Qualitative methods may help you meet this requirement. Once you have decided to embark upon the process of conducting a qualitative study, use the following steps to get started. First, review research studies that have been conducted on your topic to determine what methods and research traditions were used. Consider the strengths and weaknesses of the various research traditions, data collection methods, and data analysis methods. Next, review the literature on qualitative research methods. Every aspect of your research has a body of literature associated with it. Just as you would not confine yourself to your course textbooks for your review of research on your topic, you should not limit yourself to your course texts for your review of methodological literature. Read broadly and deeply from the scholarly literature to gain expertise in qualitative research. Additional self-paced tutorials have been developed on different methodologies and techniques associated with qualitative research. Make sure you complete all of the self-paced tutorials and review them as often as needed. You will then be prepared to complete a literature review of the specific methodologies and techniques you will use in your study.
Okay, that's basically what qualitative about. So the end of today's topic, get a clear understanding, and